Which brings me to the point about fraud. There are people who don't want to see ballots being mailed out without an application to request it in the first place. And it's based on the perception of fraud. And probably everybody who's on this line knows that there's very, very, very little personal vote fraud. That's vanishingly rare is the phrase that people tend to use. But the perception is absolutely there, and it comes from a place in history. Certainly over the course of decades, there has been fraud in elections, and it's often been by political operatives, and it's often been by using absentee ballots in states where there's some either lax rules or some ways to kind of walk around the procedures that I'll describe in a minute. So what I hear sitting at the National Conference of State Legislatures is from legislators saying, not a chance in the world am I going to go down that path because it will introduce fraud every which way. So it is a real concern. The perception is real, whether the fraud itself is. I will say that more common than election operatives doing that kind of fraud is when a couple has one person die and the other one casts the ballot for the deceased spouse. And they do it almost to honor that spouse. It is illegal, they're misguided, but they do it sort of from an internal place of knowing how that would have been voted. And the other that I'm more aware of is when a ballot, perhaps a person who's beginning to have memory loss votes an absentee ballot and then shows up at the polling place not remembering that they've already done it. And so these are onesies and twosies. And as you talk about this, it's good to know that there's little kernels of reality that then get blown up into the conversation about fraud. So what can we do about this when people ask us about fraud? I think it's to give the list of ways, and Matt addressed a couple of these briefly, and I think Tammy will touch on these in more depth, ways that we can ensure that mailed ballots, absentee ballots, or mostly mail ballots can be protected. And for my money, the first and most important is to have clean voter registration rolls. So any effort that goes into making sure that you know who should be getting a ballot in your state and not sending to anybody besides that is step number one. And then is there ballot tracking available so that a voter can see if their ballot did get back? And then is there a signature match? We can talk about that a little bit more if you'd like to, but do we really know that the person who should be voting that ballot did? And you could think of a signature match as almost a biometrics because it's hard to fake somebody else's signature. And then are the counting of the ballots open to the public? So there's a opportunity for observation that helps. Can the voter cure their ballot if there is a problem with that signature? Is there an opportunity to fix it? And then are there provisional ballots available? So these are all ways to ensure that the absentee ballot system is going to be safe and sound.